Can you assess control risk at high? Is it okay to do so? The answer is yes. Can you default to a high risk assessment for controls? The answer is no. So what's the difference in assessing control risk at high and defaulting to a high control risk? When the AICPA came out with the risk assessment standards many years ago now, they said to us, you can't default to high on your control risk. What they meant by that is we can't skip risk assessment. So once you perform your risk assessment procedures, it is permissible to assess your control risk at high, and sometimes it's the better thing to do. Now, you still have the option to bring your control risk at less than high, but if you do, then you would need to test the controls for effectiveness. And this is one of the things that peer reviewers continue to look at very closely. So in your peer review, if they look at your risk assessment summary form and they're looking at your control risk, and some of those are assessed at less than high, then the peer reviewer will look to see if you have performed a test of controls for effectiveness. If you've not performed that test for effectiveness, then you'll probably get dinged a little bit, maybe a lot. So anytime you assess control risk at less than high, you need to test those controls for effectiveness. Now, what's the minimum you have to do in regard to controls? I get asked this question sometimes. The minimum is that when you do your walkthroughs, that you're looking at the design of the internal controls, and then you're looking at the implementation of the controls. So for each significant transaction cycle, you should be performing a walkthrough, looking at the design of the controls, and then you're looking to see whether or not the control is in place, that it's being used, and what the standards refer to as implementation. Once you do those two things in the risk assessment stage, that's really all you have to do in regard to internal controls. Now, if you do this piece, and we all should be, because this is required in every audit. If you do risk assessment, you're looking at controls, and there's a deficiency in the design of the control, or maybe the control's not being used, then you're going to report that in your SAS 115 letter if you deem that control weakness as a significant deficiency or a material weakness. So let's go back to where we started. Can you assess control risk at high? And we said the answer to that is yes, you can assess control risk at high. Furthermore, you can do so for every assertion in every transaction cycle if you want to do that. Now what that means is you're performing the audit using substantive procedures. You're not testing the controls for effectiveness. Now, if you bring control risk at less than high, we just said a minute ago, you've got to test the control. So if you look at a certain control in the walkthroughs and you're thinking to yourself, I could probably test this control quickly because I can use some data analytics software and I can test this control in less than an hour. Well, if it takes less than an hour to do the test of controls for effectiveness, and alternatively, it would take, say, 4 hours to do the substantive procedures, well, we're going to elect to test controls for effectiveness. You still need to do some substantive procedures, but Sometimes you can test controls for effectiveness and it takes less time than performing substantive procedures. What I see more often, however, is that auditors perform substantive procedures and they don't test controls for effectiveness. That's a decision and a judgment that you get to make as the auditor. I hope that helps. Take care and bye now.